The Lost Messages. My name is John, and this story is about a house, an old house that my wife Emily and I bought. We always dreamed of having our own place, a home to make memories in. We were young, full of hope, and ready for an adventure. We didn't have a lot of money, but we had big dreams for our future together. This house was the start of something new for us. Something special. One sunny afternoon, we found it. An old house standing on a quiet street with a for sale sign that looked almost as old as the house itself. The price was very good, almost too good to be true. We knew it would need a lot of work, a lot of fixing, but when we saw it, we felt a connection. A pull toward its aged charm. The house looked like it came from a storybook. It had a big porch, a bit tilted, and windows that seemed to watch the street with sleepy eyes. The paint was peeling in places, and the garden was wild, full of overgrown bushes and tall grass. But to us, it was perfect. It had character. Something new houses often lack. We imagined how beautiful it could be with some care. We stepped inside for the first time, and a wave of musty air greeted us. Sunlight struggled to peek through the dirty windows, casting long shadows in the dusty rooms. The silence was deep. A silence that held many untold stories of the past. It felt like the house was waiting, holding its breath for someone to bring it back to life. We walked from room to room, our footsteps echoing. The old woman selling the house, Mrs. Gable, had kind eyes and a gentle smile. She told us the house had been in her family for generations. "It has seen a lot of life, this old place," she said softly. "It holds many stories, happy and sad." Her words stayed with me, making the house feel even more intriguing, more than just bricks and wood for us. We talked about it all evening. Could we do it? Could we manage such a big project? The idea was a little scary, but also very exciting. In the end, our hearts won. We decided to buy the old house. It felt like we weren't just buying a property. We were starting a new chapter, an adventure into the unknown, hand in hand. Moving day was a mix of chaos and excitement. The rooms looked so empty and vast without any furniture. We stood in the middle of the living room, surrounded by boxes, making plans. "This wall will be blue," Emily said, pointing, "and we can put a big bookshelf there." We felt tired but happy, ready to start the hard work of making this house our home. We decided to start the renovation with the living room. It was a big room, and we wanted it to be a cozy space for us. The first job was to remove the old, worn-out carpet. It was a dark green color, and it smelled a bit like old socks and dust. We thought a fresh new floor would make a huge difference to the room's feel. Pulling up that old carpet was much harder than we expected. It was stuck down very well in some places. We took turns pulling and tugging, sweat dripping down our faces. Underneath, the wooden floorboards were dusty and old, but they looked strong. We found some old newspapers from many, many years ago tucked under a corner of the carpet, which was interesting. After the carpet, we tackled the walls. They were covered in layers of old wallpaper, each layer a different pattern, a different era. Peeling it off was slow and messy. Little pieces of paper rained down on us as we worked. Emily was humming a happy tune, and I felt a sense of satisfaction watching the old patterns disappear, revealing the plain wall beneath. It was while I was scraping off a stubborn piece of faded floral wallpaper in a corner that I noticed something. Behind where the wallpaper was loose, the wall didn't look quite right. It wasn't a smooth plaster surface like the rest. There was a different texture, a different material. I stopped scraping and looked closer. My curiosity suddenly piqued. I ran my fingers over the spot. It wasn't treasure, not like gold coins or sparkling jewels that you read about in adventure stories. It felt like wood. A small section of wood set into the plaster of the wall. It was painted the same color as the wall, so it was very hard to see at first glance. My heart started to beat a little faster. There was a faint outline, like a small hidden door or panel in the wall. It was carefully concealed. Why would someone hide a small wooden panel in the wall like this? My mind started racing with possibilities. Was it just part of the old construction, or was it something more? Something deliberately hidden away from view for all these years? "Emily, come here. Look at this," I called out, trying to keep my voice calm, but a tremor of excitement was definitely there. She was working on the other side of the room, carefully removing wallpaper near the fireplace. She put down her scraper and walked over, her brow furrowed with curiosity at the tone of my voice. She looked where I was pointing. "What is it, John?" she asked, her eyes searching the wall. I showed her the faint outline of the wooden panel. "I think this is loose," I said, my fingers gently pressing against one edge. It moved slightly, just a tiny bit. It wasn't just part of the wall. It was separate. With a shared glance of anticipation, I carefully used my fingers to pry at the edge of the wooden panel. It was stuck tight with old paint and time, but slowly it started to give way. There was a soft creaking sound as the old wood moved. We both held our breath, wondering what we were about to uncover in this old house. Finally, the small wooden panel came away from the wall. It was about the size of a shoebox lid. Behind it, there was a dark hollow space, a small secret compartment hidden within the thickness of the wall itself. It was dusty inside, and cobwebs clung to the edges. Our eyes strained to see what lay within the darkness. And there, nestled inside the small dark hollow, was a little wooden box. It was old, the wood darkened with age, and it had a small tarnished metal clasp holding it shut. It wasn't very big, but it looked important, like it was meant to keep something precious safe for a long, long time. It sat there silently. Emily and I just looked at each other, our eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and a little bit of nervousness. What secrets did this old box hold? What stories from the past were waiting inside it for us to discover? This was not the kind of thing we expected to find when we started renovating an old house. My hand trembled slightly as I reached into the dusty hollow and carefully took out the small wooden box. It was surprisingly light, yet it felt heavy with history, with unspoken secrets. The wood was smooth in some places, worn down by time, and a little rough in others. We placed it gently on the dusty floorboard between us, the afternoon sun catching the dull glint of the metal clasp. For a moment, we just stared at it. A silent question hung in the air between us. Should we open it? It felt like a very personal thing, something hidden away with intention. Part of me was incredibly curious, almost desperate to know what was inside. Another, smaller part felt like we were intruding, stepping into a private world that wasn't ours to see. Emily finally broke the silence. "Well," she said, her voice soft, It seems like it was left here to be found, doesn't it? She reached out and touched the clasp gently with her finger. It was a simple latch, a bit rusty with age. I nodded, my curiosity winning over my hesitation. Let's open it, I agreed, my own voice barely a whisper in the quiet room. With careful fingers, I worked the small metal clasp. It was stiff from many years of disuse. There was a tiny, protesting creak, and then it sprang open with a soft click. The sound seemed very loud in the stillness of the old house. We both leaned forward, holding our breath, peering inside as I slowly lifted the lid of the old wooden box. The first thing we saw inside was a small bundle of letters. They were tied together with a faded blue ribbon. The paper was yellowed with age, the edges of the envelopes soft and worn. The ink on the address was faint, written in an old-fashioned, looping handwriting. It was clear these letters had been treasured, kept safe in this box for a very long time. Emily picked up the bundle. Letters, she whispered, looking at me with wide eyes. Old love letters, maybe. The idea hung in the air. The thought of reading someone else's personal correspondence from long ago felt both exciting and a little bit wrong, but the desire to know the story they held was strong, too strong to ignore now that we had found them. Do you think we should read them? I asked, voicing my slight unease. It feels a bit like spying on someone's past, on their private moments. Emily understood my concern. She paused, holding the letters carefully. I know, she said thoughtfully, but maybe the person who left them here wanted their story to be remembered, not forgotten in a wall. We decided to read just one to start. If it felt too private, too personal, we would stop. But we had to know, at least a little. Emily carefully untied the faded blue ribbon. It crumbled a little in her fingers. She selected the letter on top. The envelope was addressed, "To my dearest Jack," in that same elegant, flowing handwriting we had noticed before. The paper of the letter itself was thin and fragile, almost transparent in places. We handled it very gently, afraid it might tear or crumble into dust. Emily slowly unfolded it. The silence in the room was thick with anticipation as our eyes scanned the faded ink, trying to make out the words written so many years ago by an unknown hand. The letter began, "My dearest Jack, I sit by the window in our new home, and my heart is so full." The handwriting was beautiful, though a little hard to read at first. It was clearly a woman's writing. As we read on, it was like a voice from the past was speaking directly to us, sharing her thoughts and feelings. The letter was signed, "Your loving Sarah." So these were letters between Sarah and Jack. This Sarah wrote of her deep love for Jack and her excitement about starting their life together in this very house. She described how happy she was and her hopes for their future, for the children they might have, for the garden they would plant together. We looked for a date on the letter. Tucked in the top right corner, in small, neat script, it read, June 13th, 1970. That was over 50 years ago. These letters were a window into a time long before we were born, a time when this old house was young, filled with the dreams of another young couple, just like us. We carefully placed the first letter aside and looked at the others in the bundle. There were many more, at least a dozen, all in similar envelopes, all addressed to Jack from Sarah, or sometimes from Jack to Sarah. It seemed we had stumbled upon a correspondence that told the story of their life together, their journey in this home. Some of the letters we glanced at next were full of happy news. Sarah wrote about planting roses in the front garden. Were they the ancestors of the wild roses still struggling to grow there now? She mentioned getting a small dog, a terrier named Tip, who chewed Jack's favorite slippers. These small details made them feel so real. Tucked between some of the letters, we also found a few small black and white photographs. They were a little faded and creased at the edges, but the images were clear. They showed a smiling young man and a woman with kind eyes. We felt sure this must be Jack and Sarah, the authors of the letters we held. In one photograph, the couple stood arm in arm on the very porch of this house. The house looked newer then, freshly painted, with neat curtains in the windows. Sarah was laughing, her head tilted toward Jack, who looked at her with an expression of pure adoration. Seeing them there, in this place, sent a shiver down my spine. A wave of unexpected emotion washed over both Emily and me as we looked at that photograph. It was like Sarah and Jack were standing there with us, in the dusty living room. We were connected to them, to their lives, through these fragile pieces of paper and faded images. They weren't just strangers anymore. They felt like distant friends from another time. We realized then that this old wooden box held something far more precious than gold or jewels. It held memories, pieces of a life, a love story that had unfolded within these same four walls where we now stood. It was a reminder that this house had a soul, built from the joys and sorrows of those who had lived here before us. We sat there on the dusty floor for what seemed like hours, carefully reading each letter one by one. The sun began to set outside, casting long orange shadows through the dirty windows, but we hardly noticed. We were lost in the world of Sarah and Jack, piecing together their life story from these fragile pieces of paper that we had found. We learned about their simple joys. A picnic by the river, a surprise birthday party Jack planned for Sarah. We also read about their struggles, a harsh winter when the old furnace broke down, a worry about money when times were hard. It made them feel so real, so human, like people we might have known as friends or family. One letter, written in Sarah's usually cheerful script, spoke of a sudden difficulty. Jack had lost his job at the local mill, and they were worried about the future. She wrote of trying to stay strong for him, of her belief that they would get through it together, just like they always did. Her courage shone through her worried words. Another letter, a few months later, was filled with quiet hope. Sarah wrote about their dream of having a child, a little one to fill the rooms of their beloved house with laughter. She even mentioned knitting tiny blue socks. We wondered if their dream ever came true, if a child did play in this house. The letters didn't say. As we read further, the tone of some letters became a little more somber, a little sadder. There were fewer mentions of joyful outings and more about quiet evenings at home. Sarah wrote about Jack working very long hours at a new, less enjoyable job. Still, her love for him, and for their home, was always present in her words. In one of Sarah's letters, tucked carefully within its folds, we found a tiny pressed flower. It was a forget-me-not. Its blue color faded, but still visible. It felt like a symbol of her enduring love and memory. Emily gently picked it up, her eyes soft with emotion. Such a small thing, yet it spoke volumes about feelings. There was also a letter from Jack to Sarah. He was away for a short time, visiting a sick relative in another town. He wrote about how much he missed her, how empty his days felt without her smile. He also mentioned how much he missed their little house, their sanctuary, and couldn't wait to return home to her. He described looking forward to sitting with her on their porch in the evenings, just talking and watching the world go by. His words painted a picture of a deep and quiet love, a partnership built on shared dreams and mutual support. It was clear their home was the center of their world, a place of comfort and happiness for them. The very last letter in the bundle was different from all the others. The envelope was plain, and the handwriting was not Sarah's or Jack's. It was addressed simply, "To the kind person who finds this." Our hearts beat a little faster. This letter seemed to be written for us, for whoever would uncover their story next. The note inside was short, written in a neat but somewhat shaky hand, perhaps by a neighbor or a friend. It explained that dear Sarah had fallen seriously ill. It spoke of her bravery and her kind spirit, even when she was suffering. The words were full of sorrow, and we felt a lump form in our throats as we read. Jack, the note said, had cared for Sarah in this very house until her last day. He never left her side, tending to her with gentle devotion. He read to her, held her hand, and surrounded her with as much love as possible. The house became a sanctuary of care, but also of deep, quiet grief for him. The writer of the note explained that Jack lived on in the house for many years after Sarah passed away. He never remarried. He kept her memory alive in every room, in the garden they had planted together. He never stopped loving her, or the home that held all their precious memories of their life together. The note ended with a simple request. Please remember them with kindness. Their love story was a quiet one, but it was true. Let this house know that their happiness here is not forgotten. Emily was crying softly by then, tears rolling down her cheeks. I put my arm around her, feeling a profound sadness myself. The house suddenly felt different to us. It wasn't just an old building anymore. It was filled with the echoes of Sarah and Jack's life, their laughter, their tears, their enduring love. We felt a strong connection to them, a sense of responsibility to honor their memory. They had made this house a home with their story. Very carefully, we gathered all the letters and the photographs. We placed them back inside the old wooden box, along with the pressed forget-me-not. We closed the lid and fastened the little metal clasp. It felt like we were closing a precious storybook, one that had deeply touched our hearts and changed our view. We decided then that we wouldn't hide the box away in a wall again. It deserved a special place. We would find a nice shelf for it in the living room once it was renovated. It would be a quiet reminder of the love that had lived here before us, a testament to the history within these walls. The renovation work continued in the days and weeks that followed. We still pulled down old wallpaper and painted walls, but now we did it with a new kind of respect, a gentleness. We were not just fixing an old structure, we were caring for a place that held so many precious memories for others. Our house was finally becoming our home. But now, we knew it wasn't just our story that filled its rooms. It also held the beautiful, bittersweet echoes of Sarah and Jack. Their love had become a part of the house's soul, and a part of our lives too, found unexpectedly in an old wooden box. So, subscribe, not for us, but for the version of you who refuses to waste this life. We're here with you every single step of the way.